Hello, my name is Braylon Washington, and this is my ACE Media Studies critical reflection for my magazine Final Product, and my genre was science and technology. So the first question asks, how does your media product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? So for my cover, my main image is actually a partial colony of bacteria under a microscope. I chose this photo for the main image because in my research of typical covers in the genre, I found that the main images are usually something that's visually intriguing and not commonly seen in everyday life. I felt that this photo matched that description and that it would do well to, say, attract a passerby in a store. I made the main image also take up the entire cover as seen commonly in my references on the right. For my masthead, a commonality I noticed in between the mastheads in my genre is that all of them consist of capital letters, so I decided to do the same in mine. I view this as a grand gesture for magazines like Scientific American and National Geographic, emphasizing the importance of the two magazines. For the name, I chose Mind X World. It's a tribute to the essence of science as it's effective at expressing the interactions between our brains and the environments we live in that make up the knowledge we gain from science. I put it in a font called Philosopher, which provides a modern intellectual look to my masthead that invokes the sense of wonder and intellectual curiosity I was aiming for in my magazine. The color of the masthead is white because of uh, the convenient contrast to the dark background, as seen in my references as well. The placement, I placed it in the left corner of the magazine, like in Scientific American. I made the largest text on the cover to emphasize its importance. For the lead article, Micro Wonders of the World, it fits with the double-page spread story in my main image of bacteria under the microscope. The lead article is a teaser to a high-interest magazine story in my genre involving exciting advancements and breakthroughs in scientific research. It's the second largest text on the cover to emphasize its importance. That is in a lemon milk font, or it's called lemon milk. The font is called lemon milk, and it's the closest font I could find to the Scientific American font, and I made it white for the dark background contrast, similarly to the masthead. For the cover lines, all the cover lines, such as questioning Newtonian physics, have shocking titles that go against common understandings or what is expected to be feasible. Basically, it goes against common belief. This captures the unexpected and exciting nature of STEM on the cover of my magazine. However, they're less important than the lead article, so the font size is smaller for each of them. As seen in my research and displayed in my references, the cover lines often go in the top right corner of the magazine covers in my genre, and it's always three cover lines as well. For the dateline and website link, I put them right above the masthead, and um, similarly to Scientific American's way of doing it, I made the smallest text on the cover as those two are not as important as the rest of the text on the cover. I also placed a barcode to accurately represent what the magazine could look like in physical print for sale. It adds to the authenticity of my final product. I placed it in the bottom right and kind of away from the subject of the main image to avoid blocking it. For the color and the aesthetic of my cover, I primarily chose the black and white in my cover as it follows conventions found in my genre for the darker and like lighter color contrast. And it also gives off a professional and formal atmosphere to my magazine like final product, which caters to my audience, which I'll talk more about later in the reflection. For my table of contents, I created the design and layout pretty strictly to the conventions identified during my research. In the table of contents of Scientific American magazines, the name of the magazine is always found in the header of each page near the gutter, which I replicated for mine. On the first page of the table of contents, the date and issue can also be found in the header area next to the magazine name, and this genre convention was also followed in my table of contents as well. As you can see, this is volume 1, number 1, because this is my first issue of my magazine. Featured on the first page of the table of contents are articles that can be found within the magazine, including the lead article. Above each of the titles of these articles is the main branch of science that it relates to, and beneath each of the titles is a brief description of the article followed by the author's italicized name. The page number for each of the articles is typically included on the left of the title, both in bold print. Also, on the first page of the table of contents is a picture on the front cover of the magazine with a brief description underneath it related to the lead article I included. I've chosen to place this specifically next to a large image on the first page of the table of contents, because it's typically seen in my genre to clearly convey that the image is related to the lead article. On the second page is the structure of the magazine and what to expect in greater detail in a clearer outline. Photos that are commonly included on this page of the table of contents are lined up vertically in the order of their respective articles within the magazine. This high level of organization makes the table of contents easy to navigate and to find information fairly easily for the audience. For the stories featured, although in my research, I found that 6 stories are typically included in my genre's table of contents. I elected to only include 4 to avoid overwhelming my audience with too much information in the table of contents. I also viewed the inclusion of the second page as something that could make up for any loss of potential interest from not including 6 stories. I created the second page similarly to the way Scientific American does with specialized sections featured throughout the magazine. The names of these sections are related to STEM and in their unique, exclusive peeks into the work of well-known science and or technology organizations being covered in my magazine, such as Window to NASA or Google Lab Insights. Some even have names that play on the masthead name I created for my magazine, such as Quantum X World. As I mentioned before, above each of the titles of these articles is the main branch of science that it relates to. Like in Scientific American's magazines, this allows my target audience with specific interests to quickly identify what stories they may be interested in as they consider the rest of my magazine content. So for photos in the table of contents, I followed the layout of Scientific American. Again, I included 1 large photo on the first page and 3 photos on the second. The lead article got the large photo to emphasize its importance and to draw attention. Some sections featured on the second page got a photo to draw interest into them. A lot of the photos that I took outside in nature they use low and high angles to stress the size of certain objects, as seen in the low angle photo of the large uprooted tree and the bird's eye view photo of the small microcomputer in a pile of branches and leaves. The font of most of the text is in the same font as the masthead, the philosopher font, and it creates a visual uniformity and an ease of read for my audience. Some of the text is in bold and different colors to emphasize its importance and create a visual hierarchy, guiding the viewer's attention as they read or quickly even scan the table of contents for information or featured story that they were interested in from the cover. The yellow of the branches of science in my magazine contrasts with the black and white color scheme I established on the cover and table of contents, but this was done intentionally to draw attention to them and their related stories, as seen in the references on the right as well. Also, the yellow in the large image of a gene sequence in the editing software in the large image complements the yellow of the branches of science included. The pages of each of the stories are included on the side as well. My magazine in total will have around a total of 84 pages. I found that in my research, most of the magazine, they average out at around 84 pages. My cover story is page 70. I placed this towards the back of the magazine as a way of almost forcing the audience to at least skim through the rest of the magazine content, increasing the likelihood that they stop at something else that interests them, like another story or an ad. And I believe this encourages content engagement. I also included the 2024 Mind X World at the bottom of each page in the table of contents as a kind of formality, but also following conventions with Scientific American and other magazines in this genre. My double-page spread story is about a collaborative research team's exploration of underlying genetic factors of thermophile microbes and their incredible survival adaptations. The story also focuses on potential applications of their research as well as and potential for answering some of humanity's toughest questions. The length of the story, like most in my genre, is due to the heavy load of information included. It is an ideal story for this genre as well, as information is coupled with notable features such as quotes from interviews with scientists and a relaxed yet excited yet formal tone that connects the audience with the scientist and writer of the story on a more meaningful level than if I were just to spew information at them. In the creation of the story itself, I tried to mimic the almost narrative tone of Scientific American stories. The tone I took up in my story makes the audience relate to the writer in terms of excitement for science and what the implications for the future are based on the research. This tone was often seen in my research of typical stories in my genre. For the photos, I found in my research that double page spreads in my genre tend to include 2 to 3 photos, as seen in my references, so I decided to do the same with 2. The dominant secondary image in my double page spread makes use of the rule of thirds, as well as as it takes up 1/3 of the image, as well as the leading lines technique. The captions of my photos explain what is going on in the photo, and in the case of the dominant secondary image, actually show one of the scientists mentioned in the story. For my headline, Micro Wonders of the World, which was seen on the cover, I included on the top left of the double page spread. For the story organization, I organized the text of the story in a column format because this is conventionally seen in magazines in my genre and allows for easier readability for viewers. As seen in the references, the drop capital is quite conventional, especially at the start of the story, so I decided to include it in mine. The page numbers are placed on the bottom corners of the page, as typically seen in my genre, and it corresponds to the page number, or at least in my double page spread, it corresponds to the page number associated with the story in the table of contents. I also chose to include a copyright symbol at the bottom center of each page, along with the year and the masthead name I selected for my magazine, as seen in Scientific American as well. Two common social issues that I found in my research in the science and technology genre are human environmental impacts and mental health awareness. As you can see on the Scientific American side of the slide, they had a story called Trauma in the Family Tree, which was a psychological story, but it did deal with generational effects of unaddressed mental health issues. And then they have climate miseducation and rise of the toxic slime. A lot of the times these are short, blunt, and sometimes alarming headlines that are great at gaining attention and gaining traction towards these social issues. I decided to do the same or use the same method in my magazine. One of the specialized sections that I mentioned in the table of contents is called Sustainability Equals Future. And in my table of contents, I also included stories that were related to psychology and sustainability, titled Brains, The Older the Better, and Savior of the Atmosphere. Scientists are a large social group represented in this genre of magazine. A lot of times, public opinion of scientists is swayed into thinking they're these cold, emotionless human beings by usually like sci-fi novels or any form of fiction. And in my genre magazine, especially in Scientific American, the aim is to basically reverse this effect. Scientific American does this by including these headshots, these animated or art headshots of the scientists that are mentioned in the stories or writing the stories. I decided to take it a step further in my magazine, but mainly focusing on the same idea by including an image of one of the scientists mentioned in my double page spread story. Also, for the same reason, included informed, relaxed dialogue from interviews with scientists that I included in the text of my double page spread. And this was more of a conventional thing, while the picture of the scientists was unconventional. All right, that is the end of my answer to question one. Thank you for listening.